Hello and welcome back to the channel. Today we are continuing the timeline series where I've been covering various aspects of the end of the loop, and along the same vibes of some of my ancient myth videos last week, this episode will jump forward in time to archetypes at the end of the loop. An archetype is a universal pattern or symbol that recurs across cultures and historical periods, shaping human beliefs and behaviors. Carl Jung's theory identifies archetypes as fundamental psychological templates embedded in the collective unconscious, influencing human thought, mythology, and spirituality. He says, the fact that archetypal images are so packed with meaning in themselves that people never think of asking what they really mean. Understanding these archetypes is essential because they can shape collective perceptions, societal structures, and religious frameworks, profoundly influencing both individual and communal experiences. Among the diverse archetypes identified, the false prophet represents a particularly compelling figure with significant implications for understanding religious manipulation and critical thinking within spiritual contexts. The false prophet can manifest as an individual deceiver or, more insidiously, as a systemic pattern woven into institutional structures. And when we're talking about the end of the loop, we're talking about diverse places. So going back to one of our word lessons, we're looking at things that are in different places or places that we're not used to seeing them. So while we're used to seeing false prophets called out in mainstream, we're looking at more of systemic patterns woven into these institutional structures. Historically and presently, this archetype leverages authority, charisma, and emotional manipulation, positioning itself deceptively as a source of spiritual truth while obscuring genuine revelation and growth. Such deception is not always overt. It can be subtle, hiding behind a veneer of orthodoxy or popular appeal, making it harder to detect. Modern worship environments frequently exemplify this archetype by prioritizing emotional manipulation, spectacle, and conformity above authentic spiritual truth. These settings leverage strategically engineered emotional experiences to suppress genuine spiritual alignment, thereby fostering congregant dependence on external stimuli and charismatic leadership. So you have to be in the church to get that same feeling when you should be able to worship at home and have that same feeling. Consequently, direct personal revelation, spiritual autonomy, and authentic connection to deeper truths erode, leading individuals vulnerable to the manipulations of the false prophet. In this episode, we'll examine the false prophet archetype through scriptural references, psychological insights, and contemporary cultural examples. By exploring how this archetype manifests today, it will become clear how modern institutional religion often perpetuates spiritual stagnation rather than fostering authentic spiritual growth and prophetic alignment. False prophets in the Bible exhibit consistent traits: personal gain, exploitation of authority, and deception that's masked in spiritual insight. In Jeremiah 23, Ezekiel 13, and Matthew 7:15, false prophets use flattering words, offer false comfort, and reinforce existing power structures. Jeremiah 23:27 says, "Do not listen to what the prophets are prophesying you. They fill you with false hopes. They speak visions from their own minds, not from the mouths of the Lord." Examples such as Balaam, who prophesied for personal profit, and Hananiah, who deceptively promised imminent peace, illustrate the deceptive behaviors vividly. By contrast, genuine prophets in the biblical tradition were often marginalized, persecuted, or outright rejected because they challenged prevailing authority and cultural complacency. Rather than providing comforting assurances aligned with political and religious status quo, the prophets delivered challenging messages demanding introspection, repentance, and systemic change. A hallmark of the false prophet archetype includes language that's characterized by flattery, promises of peace where none will exist, and a prophetic theater that relies heavily on spectacle. These prophets derive messages from their own hearts, reflecting personal agendas rather than divine revelation. Modern parallels emerge clearly within prosperity gospel teachings, where spiritual truths are commodified, promising prosperity and peace without addressing deeper ethical or spiritual transformations. If you give the church X percent every month, then you will get X percent back in blessings, when that's not how tithing works. Furthermore, false prophets emphasize authority without responsibility, promoting immediate rewards without genuine transformation or moral accountability. If you want true change, if you really want to follow the Lord's path, that takes work. It takes steadfastness. It takes overcoming. This dynamic keeps congregations focused on superficial outcomes rather than meaningful spiritual growth, creating environments that are ripe for exploitation and spiritual stagnation. Modern worship services often deliberately engineer emotional responses through sophisticated use of music, lighting, and atmosphere, effectively stimulating spiritual experiences. Scientific studies demonstrate that these high-energy environments manipulate your dopamine responses and emotional contagion, creating a group high that congregants interpret as authentic spiritual connection. Research on social influence by psychologists such as Solomon Asch underscores how group dynamics amplify conformity and emotional responsiveness in these settings. A poignant quote from Asch is, "The tendency to conformity in our society is so strong that reasonably intelligent and well-meaning young people are willing to call white black." I'll let that sink in. Critics have specifically pointed out institutions like Hillsong Church and Bethel Music, where worship is notably geared towards entertainment and spectacle rather than a genuine connection with God and actually worshiping Him in a true and meaningful way. Instead of facilitating these authentic spiritual resonances, such services cater primarily to emotional satisfaction, social status, and personal gratification, diverting attendees from meaningful spiritual engagement. Journalist Kelsey McKinney commented on this phenomenon in the context of modern worship. It's easy to make emotional manipulation for a movement of God, right? These trends are consistent with historical patterns, wherein religious institutions adopt popular cultural elements to broaden their appeal, frequently at the expense of spiritual depth. Institutional religions today increasingly mirror corporate branding strategies, positioning churches as businesses, complete with trademark slogans, celebrity pastors, and sophisticated media strategies. Platforms such as podcasts, YouTube, and other social medias enhance leaders' influence, cultivating a superficial authority based on charisma rather than spiritual insight. Megachurch pastors, exemplified by figures such as Joel Osteen and Kenneth Copeland, often live luxurious lifestyles with multiple jets, because demons, am I right? Underscoring the commercialized nature of contemporary religious institutions. These corporate structures inherently discourage critical thinking and genuine spiritual questioning. God didn't give Kenneth Copeland a jet so that he could escape demons on planes. You are not a demon. Other Christians are not demons. Other people on this planet are not demons. Kenneth Copeland was very out of pocket when he said that. Personality cults form around charismatic pastors and worship leaders, creating environments where authority supersedes spiritual discernment. Mandatory volunteering, structured discipleship programs, and documented psychological abuses in churches like Mars Hill under Mark Driscoll exemplify subtle and overt forms of control. Ultimately, congregants face disillusionment, spiritual burnout, or complete abandonment of faith due to these toxic dynamics. Who wants to go to church and give away all of your money and not ever foster that true relationship with God that our soul craves? It's just, that's not it. That's not it. You can't go to church and pay money and get that relationship. It's not how that works. Throughout history, visionaries and prophets have consistently been silenced, censored, or labeled dangerous by institutional religious frameworks. Modern churches often avoid engaging authentically with prophetic texts like Daniel and Revelation, or frame them simplistically through fear-driven narratives of deliverance ministry, demonology, or apocalyptic threats. My personal experience reflects this reality, encountering explicit barriers and institutional gatekeeping that prevented a genuine exploration of the prophetic traditions that I needed to know about. And this effectively muzzled my spiritual inquiry for a while. Churches shouldn't do this. Churches shouldn't tell people who are coming to them that certain books are off limits, or that you're too young or too inexperienced or too whatever to learn about Daniel or Revelation or Ezekiel. These are books that should be studied, not just because of the things that we're going through now, but because they also pertain to our inner selves and our inner workings as divine children of God. However, institutions maintain strict control over prophetic interpretations, demanding theological conformity aligned with singular doctrinal definitions. Historical parallels include Martin Luther's intentional censorship by the Catholic Church and the marginalization of visionary figures such as William Blake, whose radical spiritual insights threatened prevailing orthodoxy. Contemporary examples continue this pattern, with prophetic voices sidelined or censored within mainstream religious discourse. Institutional religion often prioritizes conformity through repetitive doctrine, ritualistic practices, and enforced adherence, creating environments that actively suppress authentic spiritual evolution. These environments typically discourage individual inquiry and critical examination of established beliefs. Genuine spiritual experiences, however, are characterized by transformative, personal revelations stemming from inner exploration and direct engagement with spiritual truths, rather than external imposition of rigid doctrinal adherence. History provides numerous examples of institutional resistance to spiritual evolution. For instance, the persecution of the Cathars, who emphasized direct expression of the divine and challenged the authority of the Catholic Church, and the suppression of the teaching of Meister Eckhart, who advocated for inner contemplation and a personal relationship with God. These instances highlight the persistent tendency of religious institutions to suppress movements in individuals that question or challenge established authority in favor of maintaining control and promoting uniformity. Mystical, meditative, and Gnostic traditions have historically preserved pathways to spiritual evolution through direct personal revelation. These traditions offer profound methods for cultivating inner transformation, emphasizing direct experience over external conformity. Sufism, with its focus on meditative practice like dhikr and the pursuit of union with the divine, exemplifies this. Quakerism's inner light encourages introspection and personal connection with the divine, emphasizing that God is within each individual. Gnostic Christianity, with its emphasis on gnosis or intuitive knowledge, highlights the importance of direct experiential revelation, challenging the authority of external religious structures. These practices facilitate a shift from external ritualism to inner spiritual understanding, leading to a more profound and personal faith experience. Maintaining that true spiritual growth and alignment occur through inner transformation, not just external conformity that encourages ongoing personal spiritual evolution. So in conclusion, the false prophet archetype will function to sustain illusions of spiritual growth while resisting genuine transformation. Institutional religion, influenced by this archetype, redirects authentic worship and prophetic revelation towards superficial spectacle, emotional manipulation, and conformity-driven structures, impending spiritual evolution. And since we're talking about the end of the loop, the culmination of this is a permeating problem within churches today. We have to do better. We have to have our personal relationship with God. We have to grow ourselves as Christian. We have to cast off the old man and become the new. We have to use discernment, critical thinking, having a closer walk with God. Not just rely on our churches and our pastors to feed us information that feels good every Sunday, to not just go and experience a fun worship service. Fun worship services are fun. I like them too. But don't forget to keep your wits about you. Remember what is worship, what is not worship. Remember that you are a child of God and that you are in church to respect and worship Him. So as we transition to episode 4, the series will explore how authentic prophetic insight emerges through dreams, inner symbols, and personal revelation. So why getting to know yourself and these inner insights and disconnecting from the emotional manipulation is important so that we can continue on this journey. And this inner pathway will reconnect individuals directly to spiritual truths, breaking free from the constraints imposed by these institutional gatekeepers. And so that wraps it up for today. As always, there's sources in the channel bio. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring the bell like the winners that you are. And I will see you next time.